Hi there, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this live panel debate session. I'm Mark Constable from APMG, and in a few moments I'll hand you over to our CEO and debate chair, Richard Farrow. But before I do that, I will just cover a few logistics for the session before we get into the session proper. So the first thing to note is we are recording the session, and everyone that's registered will receive a follow-up email as soon as the recording is available online. So do look out for that later today. Look out for polls. We've got the same poll, but it's going to be asked multiple times. So we're just trying to gauge some feedback and any changes in views as we go through this session once we hear different parts of the debate. So do look out for those. We'll warn you obviously when they're coming. And towards the end of the session, we'll have a short window for questions. And unless you're on a mobile device, you should see an option on your go-to control panel to submit questions. So we'll look at those carefully and address a few of those towards the end. And last but not least, your feedback is very welcome because it helps us to improve these sessions going forward. So you have my email address from some of the registration confirmation emails and also the follow-up later today. So any feedback gratefully received. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand you over to Richard now, who will tell you a bit more about the agenda and introduce you to our panel. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Mark, and welcome everybody, wherever you may be. We had a really good registration for this event, which is our first. This is the first time we've tried the format of a debate between two protagonists who off screen are very good friends and respect each other, but on screen have agreed to take some opposite views to try to settle a question that we'll come on to later. As Mark said, throughout the session, we'd like you to vote on how your views have changed once you've listened to the arguments put forward by Adrian and Ian. And if you like this format, and if you have any other ideas on how we could have a topic in a similar format, please could you put that into the chat, particularly if you'd be willing to take a position on either arguing for or against something. And as Mark said, we will take some questions right at the end. But the guys are under strict time constraints on making their cases for and against. And unlike the American debate, we actually have the American presidential debate. We do have a mute button. So if any of them start talking over each other, they will be muted. So without any further ado from me, I'd like to invite Adrien to introduce himself first. Adrien.
Right. Good afternoon, evening, or good morning, everybody, depending on which part of the world you're in. My name's Adrian Dooley. I've been in project management for over 40 years now, starting off as a construction project manager, moving quickly into IT in the early days of PC software. And since then, over the last 4 decades, I've been involved in training, consultancy, and publishing, all exclusively within the sphere of project delivery, which is the term I'll be using today to refer to projects, programs, portfolios, Agile, Waterfall. It's all just project delivery. So that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian. And for you, Ian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us for this debate. My name is Ian Clarkson. I'm a PPM Consultant at QA Ltd, the training company. So I've got over 20 years experience in kind of project program management, organizational change, and training delivery, working with many organizations throughout my career, helping them, advise them around kind of project management and how to make that work effectively for them in their organizations. So that's me.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, can we move on to the next slide? So the purpose of this session is to try and take a debating stance. So Adrian's going to take a position that he believes that defining all forms of project delivery using artificial constraints such as project, program, Agile and Waterfall is counterproductive. And Ian's going to take the opposite view to put forward a different case where actually they are quite useful to have those different components and different ways of thinking. Now the format is that Adrian will have 5 minutes to set out his case, and Ian will have 5 minutes to set out his case. They have both seen what each of them are going to say at the outset, and in order to try to keep it within the time, they will be referring to notes. So if they lose eye contact with the camera, that's acceptable, because clearly they do need to stick to the point. We will then have a vote on whether your views have changed following their presentations, and then they will have another go of 3 minutes each. We'll have another vote on that, then they'll have another go of 3 minutes each, and a final vote, and at the end there'll be a summary and any questions. And so we hope to take about 45 minutes for the debate, but we will see how good we are. So before we start, can we move on to the next slide, Mark? If we could go to the audience poll. So Mark will show where the poll is, and you have 4 options on the poll. So if you would vote, and please could everybody vote, because what we're looking for is how our views change as we go through the session. So you've got 4 options. If we could give you a minute or so to vote, and then we'll be able to share how you voted, so we know how this audience viewed the question. I asked to put in "don't care" at the bottom, just in case someone doesn't. I'd find it very hard if someone's taken the trouble to join the debate if they don't care. But it's to cover all bases, so you should have an opinion that fits into one of those 4 options. So we'll wait until people have had an opportunity to vote.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Polls online now, and votes coming in. We're just over 60% voted at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, we've got around 80% now, and we might lose a few because if you're on a mobile device, you may not be able to do the poll. So that might be a good time to close.
Okay. Yeah, let's close it and see what we have.
Okay, so results of the first poll should be on screen. So we got 33% agree, 40% do not agree, 25% don't know, and then 2% don't care.
Okay, so thank you very much. So Adrian, I think you've got the challenge. You've got to convince the vast majority of our audience that the proposition is the right proposition. So I think without any further ado, you have 5 minutes in which to do that. Over to you, Adrian.
Always good to start off as the underdog. So I'd like to start off with a bit of historical context. The terms we're discussing today are not fundamental principles. Before 1992, the terms project and program were largely interchangeable. And before 2001, projects were performed with the requisite degree of agility without being constrained by some sort of binary concept of either being agile or not being agile. But in the space of that 10 years, the foundations were laid for today's rather monochrome view of project delivery. This monochrome approach, as I call it, creates pigeonholes and then forces people to put everything into a very limited range of concepts. Now, it's an example of what the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins calls the discontinuous mind. Dawkins points out that the human desire to put everything into discrete pigeonholes is a natural consequence of evolution. Creating stereotypes is just a way of making efficient use of our brain's limited processing capabilities. Now, while Dawkins talks about the tyranny of the discontinuous mind in the context of important social issues, I'm here just to talk about project delivery. And in that context, I'm going to focus on one particular Dawkins quotation. He said, "The discontinuous mind is blind to all intermediates." Now, bear that in mind. The mind is blind to intermediates when you're trying to put everything into discrete pigeonholes. And that's what underpins my assertion that artificial constraints are counterproductive. If something is either a project or a program, then the implication is that these 2 concepts are mutually exclusive. If something is Agile or Waterfall, then similarly, these have to appear mutually exclusive, and all intermediates become invisible. Now, taking those two pairs separately, when it comes to projects and programs, I'm not saying these terms should be avoided. Rather, we should see them as points on a continuum or spectrum, which means that they cannot be defined in a way that makes them mutually exclusive. But exclusivity is what most best practice guides seek to achieve when they define these pigeonholes. Now, I'm going to use Axelos definitions here, but all best practice suites tend to use very similar definitions. The defining characteristic of a program is that it directs the implementation of outcomes and benefits, while a project is created to deliver products according to a business case. Now, this gives rise to the accepted wisdom that projects deliver products and programs deliver benefits. This is an attractive distinction because it's simple and easily understood. The discontinuous mind thrives on these neat divisions and saves us from worrying about all the intermediates, of which there are many. In the case of Agile versus Waterfall, I take a different stance. I believe these terms should be avoided, and we should focus on relative rather than deterministic terms, such as predictive and adaptive. If you go back to the Roman Empire, Christopher Wren's building of St. Paul's Cathedral, and numerous projects in World War II, they all demonstrate considerable agility. Not agile, but agility. And agility is fundamental to competent project delivery. It always has been. All the energy that goes into antagonizing or even agonizing, all the energy that goes into agonizing about definitions of these mutually exclusive pigeonholes may appeal to the discontinuous mind, but its flawed approach creates confusion and division. I have numerous examples of this. I'll give you one principal problem initially. Prince 2 Agile refers to value and how this should be delivered incrementally. It also confirms that the terms of value and benefits are often interchangeable. But Prince 2, if you like the conventional Prince 2, says that delivering benefits is the purpose of a program, even though they are essential components of a project's business case. So it would seem that Prince 2 Agile delivers benefits, but Prince 2 just talks about them and leaves it to a program to achieve them.
You only have 30 seconds.
So in strict accordance with Prince 2's definition of a project, a Prince 2 Agile project must be a program. We really do need to recognize that project delivery is a landscape. It's a spectrum of complexity. I believe the vast majority of project delivery comprises initiatives that require a combination of approaches that we currently separately refer to as project management, program management, Agile, and Waterfall. Most initiatives are intermediates. Using Dawkins' premise that all intermediates are invisible, we have a problem that we are creating managers who can only respond to one subset. And that is why I maintain that the terms are artificial and counterproductive.
Thank you very much, Adrian. An interesting point of view. We'll see how Ian reacts to that and how indeed the audience react to it when they come back to their vote. So Ian, over to you to shoot down that very erudite presentation on discontinuity. So over to you.
Thanks, Richard, and thank you, Adrian, for your kind of interesting, compelling and very thought-provoking assertion. I'm going to spend a few minutes now just kind of providing my challenging view, if you like. So fundamentally, humans do not like chaos. We like order. It's a psychological, it's an anthropological, and it's an evolutionary thing. From the hunter-gatherers trying to recognize the potential danger in the rustle of a bush to the digital transformation we find ourselves in the midst of now, the world is a complex and dangerous place. So we don't just like order, we need order. And to find order, we like to categorize things. And I'm just going to quote for a minute the neuroscientist Daniel J. Levitin from his book, The Organized Mind, Thinking Straight in the Age of Information Overload. And what Daniel Levitin says is, the act of categorizing helps us to organize the physical world out there, but also organizes the mental world, kind of the world in here, if you like, in our heads, and thus what we can pay attention to and remember. And there's even a phrase for this, it's called compartmentalization. And in psychology terms, compartmentalization is a defense mechanism to avoid cognitive dissonance, which is the need for humans to strive for psychological consistency to function mentally in the real world. And it's a term or a concept first introduced by the American social psychologist Leon Festinger. Or to put it a bit more simply, compartmentalization is how we like to categorize things into little boxes to make sense of what we're doing. So I assert that we need terms such as project, program, agile, and waterfall to compartmentalize the change that we are delivering, and therefore help us make sense of what we're doing. And if we can make sense of what we're doing, we can do it more effectively, which is in itself a form of order, to organize the physical world, but also organize the mental world. But let me bring it back to project delivery to illustrate, because that's what we're here to talk about. Think of change for a moment in its broadest sense. Change can be, and I'm sure you can all attest to this, often is chaotic. And as I've just discussed, it's our natural human tendency to seek to find order from chaos. So taking the first two compartments, if you like, projects and programs, these are distinct, and we need to categorize them as different compartments to make sense of them. Without using such terms, how are we going to bring order to the ensuing chaos? The world is complex enough. We don't need more complexity by not knowing what to call the beast we're trying to tame. It's anthropological. Hunter-gatherers would have categorized beasts into, for example, likely to eat me, a bad category, or not likely to eat me, a good category. And I'm sure you all categorize your own projects into compartments such as IT, HR to help bring about order. Another illustration, a project doesn't deliver change, a program does. A project delivers the outputs, the deliverables, the products that enable business changes to happen and the benefits to hopefully be realized. It's not in the scope of the project to see that through. Programs do deliver change in the way they're structured. Just think of the concept of tranches, if you like, in programs versus stages or phases in projects as a way of chunking up that change. MSP defines a tranche as a group of projects structured around distinct step changes in capability and benefit delivery. That's very different to the concept of a stage or a phase in the project, where this subdivision does not necessarily represent benefit delivery. So we need to categorize them so we can deliver them, not just for the organizational benefit, but our own. Organize the physical world, but also organizes the mental world. But when it comes to Agile versus Waterfall, my assertion holds. Categories or compartments such as Scrum, Lean, Kanban or Waterfall, or anything else for that matter, provide us with order.
You have 30 seconds.
So to summarize, it's not me saying that we need terms such as project, programs, Agile and Waterfall. It's psychology, anthropology and evolution. As humans, we need order, and categorizing the complexities provides us with this order. Our project delivery world is no different. And I'll give the last word to Jordan B. Peterson in his book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. And Jordan B. Peterson says, to journey happily may well be better than to arrive successfully. I assert that we need to know what we are traveling in to journey happily. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Ian. Just for some feedback, both of you overran by 20 seconds exactly each. So that's very good. Mark, can we go to the polling booth? So we've heard some very interesting arguments, some very deep philosophical arguments, and clearly the guys have done their research into what they would like to base it on. So can we see whether any minds have been changed? So would you mind going back to the polling station and vote based on the arguments we've heard so far? And Mark, if you could see when we get about 75–80% of people.
Sure, and I'll keep a log of each round just to see what changes we might see. Okay, we're around 80%, so I'll close that now and share on screen. And I think the key change is we've moved some people from the don't know category, which seems to have benefited Adrien more at this stage. So we've got 42.
Sorry, Mark, I made a note at the beginning. First off, the 2% who don't care have either left the discussion or have changed their mind. The don't knows have halved from 25% to 12%, so they are persuaded. Adrien has increased from 33% to 42%, and Ian has increased from 40% to 46%. So probably similar size growth, not in percentage terms, but probably in terms of numbers to between them. So that's excellent. So we move on to round two, and round two again is where Adrien tries to debunk or disagree with Ian's arguments, and Ian will then try to do the same with Adrian's arguments. So this is much more of a free floating round. So we may hear less historic references and more off the cuff and off the top of the head views. So over to you, Adrien.
All right, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Ian. I think very clearly from that, we're in great agreement that there is an evolutionary origin to this tendency to what Ian calls compartmentalization. And I'd just like to thank him for introducing that word, because I know I'm going to struggle to say it several times. Now, this evolutionary origin of compartmentalization, I understand. Is this thing going to eat me or not? I need to make a split-second life or death decision. But that's not what we're doing now. We're not making split-second decisions. We're taking a measured view of something that we have to manage. And I would take particular issue with a statement that Ian made, and particularly, obviously took from the definitions that I referred to. And that was that a project doesn't deliver change, a program does. To which I would say, why? Now, obviously, in this context, that's a rhetorical question. So why does a project not deliver change? Well, it's purely because that's the way we've defined it. There's nothing fundamental that says a project can't deliver change. And I would argue that if you have a piece of work, an initiative that has a single output, a modest amount of change that you need to achieve to convert that output into benefits, why set up a program organization to do that? Why not do it within the confines of what we generally understand to be a project organization? And I think this is one of the problems, is people look at a piece of work and say, oh, it's got some benefits in it, therefore we must set up a program. No, it's a small piece of work, one output, one benefit. Do it as a project. What's the big deal? No analogy is perfect, but it strikes me that this approach of project, program, agile, waterfall, it's a bit like painting by numbers. You might end up with a good representation of whatever it is that you're painting, but it's not going to get you into the Royal Academy. Da Vinci, Gauguin, they didn't start with painting by numbers. They understood that you have to blend colors, hues, tones, in order to get to really understand art, and project management is part art, part science. And I think you need to understand those hues and tones and shades and blend them to meet the purposes of each problem that you face.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, I have I have another session in a moment, so I'll be able to introduce my three areas that this compartmentalization causes problems. So the first one I would just talk about is forced compartmentalization, and I think that we're forced into creating these compartments. And if you look at Axelos P3M3 maturity model, you'll find that it's about 2 to 3 times the size it needs to be, because everything's duplicated for project and program, because they're fundamentally the same sort of, they work to the same principles. But hopefully I might have a chance to come back to that, because my time is up. Over to you,
Thank
Ian.
you, Adrian. Thank you. Over to you, Ian. I mean, he really struggles with compartmentalization, so I think you've got him on the run there. So over to you to explain to Adrian where he is misunderstood. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Adrian. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes now just kind of addressing some of the arguments that Adrian made. I'd like to start off by saying that I agree it's not life or death decisions, although some of the projects I've been on, I've felt like it's been life or death for my career, I should say. So I do agree with the statement that Adrian made, that the evolutionary statement that it's a human desire to put everything into discrete pigeonholes, and how that's a natural consequence of evolution. Yet it's also this evolutionary side of things that gives the desire for the order that we need. You know, as humans, we're kind of pre-programmed, if you like, over millennia in order to think and act and behave and to want to seek that order. Also, I don't disagree with Adrian's statement that the discontinuous mind is blind to intermediates. Yet where our views do diverge is that this is seen as a bad thing in project delivery. Like Adrian, I don't want to comment on the social issues that Dawkins discusses in his paper. I consider the discontinuous mind essential to project delivery, as it's these discontinuities that define the very kind of boundaries that we need for the categories that we desire to deal with the chaos. So in this regard, the statement that discontinuous mind is blind to intermediates, I would say the discontinuous mind needs to be blind to the intermediates to create the order that we seek. Adrian also concluded that we need a continuous mindset, and my assertion is we need almost a discontinuous mindset. We need the pigeonholes. I came across a wonderful blog by a psychotherapist called Mel Schwartz, and his blog was called, or is called, A Shift of Mind. And it was in one of his blogs that I found the following quote: "The notion of order is equivalent to a sense of predictability." And like evolutionary influences, we like predictability. I'm not talking about predicting project estimates or predicting expected benefit values. Rather, I'm talking about predicting predictability brings us a sense of control and a comfort zone. Mel goes on to say, order creates a comfort zone as we can be assured of familiar terrain. Mel's blog also says predictability relies upon certainty and measurable outcomes. Whilst none of us, I'm sure, are saying projects or programs are wholly certain, we can definitely say
30 seconds.
Thank you. We can definitely strive for measurable outcomes or benefits, if we're taking the positive view there. Measurable outcomes could also be negative or disbenefits, if you will, yet I hope none of us are striving for disbenefits. Where we can seek certainty, however, is what we call things, and that predictability brings us back to what we're doing, back to the little boxes again. So in summary, we need a discontinuous mindset to provide those boundaries of the categories to provide order. And from that order, we get a sense of predictability. And predictability brings us control, and predictability brings us comfort. It's almost a basic human need, almost Maslowian, if you will. So that's me, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I mean, that was wonderful. We're into Maslow, we're into various blogs and philosophy. So let's see whether either of you convince the audience to move one way or another. So if we could go back to the polling booth and see what the current view is.
Okay, Richard, latest polls on screen.
Okay, thank you. I just hope we don't have any more dropping into the don't care because of the presentations, but let's see how we go. Hopefully everyone is now going to centre around either agreeing or disagreeing, and the don't knows will be even smaller than they were last time. Again, Mark, if you could summarise when we get to 75, 80%.
Sure. Okay, we've just seemed to have stalled just below 80, so I'll close it there.
Okay.
And it's evened up.
Oh, look at that. 45.
There's all to play for.
It's everything to play for in this round. Clearly, we have switched a few people off who have dropped into the don't care. So as we're doing well for time, I'm going to give you guys an extra minute. So you have 4 minutes on the closing session each to try to move the don't knows and the don't cares into one of the rows above. So clearly this is going to be much more ad hoc than the other rounds. So Mark, if we will go back to cameras, out of the poll. So we'll start with you, Adrian. You started as the underdog. You like being the underdog. It's now your chance to get your nose in front. So over to you.
It's the final sprint. Okay. I'm going to pick up on two aspects of where I think compartmentalization causes problems. The first one is that you might initially call it loyalty, but loyalty descends into cultism. And I think we see this a lot with the Agile versus Waterfall debate, particularly on social media like LinkedIn. Agile has a loyal following and it's become something of a cult. You can see this because a lot of social media posts make the mistake of trying to vilify Waterfall. So I can only justify my particular end of the spectrum being wonderful by denigrating the opposite end of the spectrum. As I said, I think we need to think about agility across the spectrum. We need to stop thinking about these polarized compartments, and competent project managers would be able to apply the relevant amount of agility to the problem that faces them. And my premise is that this has always been the case. It was only in 2001 that we ended up with this polarization between agile and not agile. The other point I would make is a much more pragmatic one. All these guides, whether they be agile, project, program, whatever, if you look at them closely, you'll find that, for example, they're all based on the same life cycle. The structure we use for governance of all of these elements of project delivery. They all talk about risk management. They all talk about stakeholder management. They all talk about a variety of things. And of course, the principles of managing risk don't vary. They remain constant. So if you're somebody who reads these guides or perhaps goes on courses, if you go on a a Prince 2 course for process. You go on an APM course to learn the principles in a body of knowledge. You go on an MSP course for program management, an Agile course. You're learning risk management, the principles of risk management 4 times. You're learning the fundamentals of life cycle 4 times. You're learning the principles of stakeholder management 4 times. It's just not necessary. And why is it happening? It's because these things have been compartmentalized. I told you I was going to have problems with that. So you end up with an awful lot of duplication from a very pragmatic point of view, as well as losing that mindset that sees all the intermediates where these things can be blended into a really beautiful picture rather than a patchwork of painting by numbers. So I think I would close, possibly a little bit earlier, Richard, by saying that I understand the argument for compartmentalization. We do that in all aspects of our life. But of course, there is a limit to how far that needs to go to be useful. And my argument is that in our working life, project delivery is a good compartment. And it's a compartment that doesn't warrant being broken down into smaller artificial compartments. Let's get managers, sponsors, stakeholders who are competent in project delivery, not adherence, almost religious adherence to some artificial sub-compartment of that larger compartment. I've caught you out now because I finished early, haven't I?
Well, you didn't finish as early as you thought you would. You finished 10 seconds early within the 4 minutes. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So you've cast the last die now. So it's over to Ian to come back on Adrian's comments and see whether you can get your following to increase from 45% to even more. So you have 4 minutes, Ian. So over to you.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Adrian. I was scribbling down a few notes there, and I wrote down Adrian's quote: "Loyalty descends into cultism," which I think is a great statement. So, okay, just to kind of provide my kind of closing arguments, if you like. You've run out of milk, okay? So you go down to the supermarket to buy some, and when you get there, you go into the supermarket, the grocery store, and you see all a load of similar items together. You know, bread's in the bakery, toilet rolls are in the kind of the bathroom stuff aisle. Tomatoes are in the vegetable aisle. Some of us may argue they should be the fruit aisle, but that's a different debate waiting to happen, Richard. And milk is in the refrigeration aisle. So we need milk. We're going to get some. You go into the supermarket and you automatically go to the fridge aisle, don't you? You just go there. That's where you go. You know it's there. You don't actually really think about it. Even if you're thinking, well, I do online shopping, well, you'll find it under the, I don't know, fresh produce or drink section or whatever it is. And why? Because we like to categorize things. That's my fundamental argument here, is that evolution is telling us that we like to categorize things to make them simpler to understand. And if we can break them down and understand them more simply, we can do them better. It's familiar, which is a result of order. How many times when you go back to your favorite supermarket and you don't even, you just kind of automatically know that kind of the toilet rolls are in aisle 37 or whatever it may be. You just go there, don't you? Project delivery is no different. Adrian talked about kind of the duplication, if you like, of all these additional things that the different categories hold. And I'm fine with duplication because I'd rather have it said multiple times to give us the order that we need than not at all. Look, life is chaotic, okay? And change is chaotic. So we should use the same tools of familiarity, order, predictability that we need in our own lives, in our own project delivery. terms such as project, program, agile and waterfall are like our project supermarket aisles. They're like our bakery aisle, our refrigeration aisle, our vegetable aisle, and our bathroom aisles, if you like. I'm just saying, let's bring into project delivery what we need in our everyday life. My position has always been that these are not artificial constraints for the sake of it. We need them from that psychological, anthropological and evolutionary perspective. So I'm just going to finish. I kind of opened up with an early quote from Jordan B. Peterson in his book 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. I'm going to close from him as well. Okay. And what Jordan B. Peterson said was, we require routine and tradition. That's order. Order can become excessive, and that's not good. But chaos can swamp us, so we drown, and that's also not good. We need to stay on the straight and narrow path. My argument is terms such as project, program, agile, waterfall, and any other that we want to kind of bring into the mix here keeps us on the straight and narrow. There we go. Closing, talking about supermarkets, Richard.
Thank you very much, Ian. What an amazing session.
Supermarkets is a raw example for me. My wife still hasn't convinced me that when I spend 15 minutes looking for short grain rice in the rice aisle, that is simply because short grain rice is in the pudding aisle.
Right. So I don't know if I could follow that very much, but clearly, thank you both very much. We've gone from evolution, we've gone from philosophy, and we've even gone from what aisle in the supermarket short grain rice should be. It's a good job Ian didn't go and find it, because he probably would be in the wrong aisle. But anyway,
I certainly was.
Let's go back to the polling booth to see whether anyone has been convinced either way by your closing arguments.
Okay, last poll is open.
Thank you.
Okay, we're slowing again just below 80, so I think we'll close there.
Okay.
And results on screen.
Hey, look at that. The underdog had just squeezed into the front. We had more of a change in the don't knows, and the don't cares did drop 1%. So I think this house agrees with the proposition that defining all forms of project delivery using artificial constraints such as project, program, agile, and waterfall is counterproductive. So, as they would say in those places of democracy, the ayes have it. So, thank you very much. Mark, could you go back to the normal slides?
Should be back now.
Yes, it is. What's the next? Can we go to the summary questions and answers? So it's very hard to summarize, I think, what I found to be a fascinating 2 points of view. Thank you both very much for the work you obviously put in doing the initial research, coming up with some quite interesting views based on whether I should be worried about whether my project's going to eat me or whether my project isn't going to eat me, to the shopping habits of the average British male when he goes to the supermarket, and the need to have your wife with you to make sure that you go to the right place, because the average British male would probably come back with the wrong thing if he was sent on his own. Likewise, he might get eaten if he went hunting on his own. So thank you all both very much. Thank you everybody for joining us. We did say we will take some questions. If we have, we do have some questions. And if anyone wants to contact either Adrian or Ian, their email addresses will follow in a minute, and you could do so clearly in the chat box. As I said earlier, if anyone liked the format and thinks it's a good format to debate another topic, please let us know in the chat box, particularly if you're willing to take one of the points of view. And it would be good to have as much diversity as we could among the panel so that we can get a wide range of views. Let me see if I can find. Well, the first question is, how can Agile delivery be implemented in construction projects? Do either of you have any views of using Agile delivery in construction?
Shall I go first, Ian?
Yeah, please do, Adrian. Thank you.
I know there's a danger I'm going to turn everything towards the argument that I've been putting forward, but I think the question illustrates the problem. Applying Agile to construction, well, it depends on your definition of Agile. And the fact that we've compartmentalized it means you've got to have a definition of Agile. My argument would be that 40 years ago, when I was in a multidisciplinary team on a building site, trying to make sense of the architect's drawings, which didn't quite work in practice, and you had the tradesmen, the bricklayers, the carpenters, me as the engineer, the clerk of the works, who's the client's representative, working out how to make this actually work in practice. We were being pretty agile. We were demonstrating agility with the basic specification and making it work. So I think, you know, we were demonstrating a lot of agility 20 years before the word agile ever came along.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I think it's about how do you apply agility in construction, not agile in construction.
Okay, Ed, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to governance, you know, kind of, and have you got the things in place, if you like, in order to allow you to deliver on your objectives. And we know that governance can be different, whether it be a project or a program, for example, you know, when you think about the different roles and the different layers of governance. So in order to kind of, for me to make it work, you've got to make sure that your governance is right. And again, like Adrian, I don't want to kind of bring it back to kind of the sides of the argument, but the governance is different, and we need that kind of structure in order to help us do what we need to do and to bring a bit of simplification to it. So for me, it's kind of the governance is what's key here around that.
One of the questions does confirm that the person that raised it, Bruce, says that projects can and do deliver change irrespective of formal definition. So there's a question in there sort of saying it's really about what you do rather than what you call it. Is there an argument for middle ground depending on the audience? So if you're working with people who understand and are comfortable with compartmentalization, then you go with it, and if people aren't comfortable, you don't go with it. Would either of you like to sort of express a view on that?
I think
sources for courses.
I think to a degree. I know I was looking at a job ad recently, and it said that the company wanted to employ an agile project manager. So I thought, well, okay, you know, if all their projects are agile, then employ somebody who is very focused on that particular subset of project delivery. My concern would be that if the company is only employing agile project managers, what do they do when a piece of work comes along to which agile isn't really relevant? You know, I would rather have project managers who are competent in agile or competent in all forms of agility, rather than label them as being, well, you can only manage projects if they're agile projects. We need waterfall project managers for everything else. It's just so artificial, and yeah, it doesn't work neatly.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Ian, any comment?
I'm a pragmatist at heart, really. Or, well, I like to think I am. And,
No,
you know,
we
at the end
think
of the
you
day,
are.
yeah, in all of projects, programs, etc., we all agree that one size doesn't fit all. It's going to need tailoring and embedding into the organisation. So, you know, is there a middle ground area? Yeah, you know, pragmatically, I think there is. Yes, you know, kind of things can have to be adapted and can have to be tailored here, and what works for the organisation ultimately. So I do think there is kind of, you know, Adrian and I are kind of taking a different views, but I do think there is a middle ground because things have to be adapted. We can't just take Agile and drop it into construction, as you say, because it won't work as is. So yeah, I think there is.
And here's another one. This comes from Raj, who has asked probably the longest question I've seen, but it comes down to we live in difficult times and organizations are implementing change all the time. So saying projects deliver outputs is problematical. Surely any change delivery should focus on the delivery of outputs, capabilities and outcomes and benefits. So why create the compartments? Just focus on that delivery and outcome that's required and get on with delivering it. Would you both agree with that, or would you disagree and think it's more important to go back to the compartmentalization?
I'll go with my view, which is
excellent.
Ultimately, you need to know what the beast is in order to tame it. You know, that's kind of, you know, I guess the question back to the floor, you know, to everybody listening and attending is, you know, kind of, do you know what a program is? Do we know what a project is? Would you use a kind of a program management method to run a project and vice versa? You know, could you use project management to run a program? And therefore, if the answer is no, for me, there's a compartment needed there, if you like. And certainly from my experience working with organizations, sometimes you try and use the proverbial sledgehammer with a nut. You know, you're trying to kind of tame the beast using the wrong tool. And I think if that's the case and we're struggling, then the compartments are necessary. Yeah.
Okay. Adrian, quickly.
Coming back to my last point, I think it's perhaps the size of the compartment. I said project delivery is as a compartment is as small as you can get. And so I think when we go back to the evolutionary thing, if I see a tiger coming towards me, I'm not going to sit and debate whether it's a Javanese tiger or a Siberian tiger. I'm just going to say it's a tiger. That's all I need to know. Debate at any greater level of detail is unnecessary. And I think so it is with project delivery. We just need to know that we've got to do something to produce some benefits and get on with it. And not worry about any form of categorization in a detail below that.
Adrian, that probably leads into the next question, which is from John, that says, whilst the definitions might be flawed, surely we need them to have some common understanding. So you need to know it's a tiger and not a pussycat. So yeah, maybe we do need them as a term of reference for discussion, communication, to make sure that we are talking about something similar. And so without them, how do you start getting people to understand your continuum of programs to projects or whatever it is? You have to start from somewhere. How would you argue against that?
Very simply by saying drop the word definition and replace it with the word description. So I can describe a typical program, I can describe a typical project, and I could describe any intermediate between those two. The problem comes when you try and define them.
Okay, thank you. Ian, are you going to let your case rest or?
No. I was trying to think of the quote, and I might not have got it quite right, but is it every journey begins with a single step? You know the thing I'm trying to say, don't you? And we need to understand where to start. We need to understand what that step is. So it's kind of like, is this a project? Is it a program? Are we using Agile? Are we using Waterfall? Enable us to start that journey. Whether we end up on the same journey is a different matter, but we need to know kind of where that journey starts. And so it's back to the knowing which box to stand in at the beginning, really, for me.
We've got a question from Stefan, which could be a philosophical question. I'll let you guys work this one out. His question simply is, why do they constantly change where things are in the supermarket?
Could you say that again? I might need to just
why
work
do
that
they
through.
constantly change where things are in the supermarket? Now, it's a marketing thing, so that you go and find something next to the short grain rice or next to the milk that they might think you want to buy.
I think it's a conspiracy between the supermarkets and the mobile phone companies. Because things get moved around and categorized in unexpected ways. That's why if you walk into a supermarket, you'll often find it full of middle-aged men on their mobile phones asking their wives where something is or whether this is the right thing.
Let's move on. I'm very conscious of the time because we need to finish in a couple of minutes, but there are a couple of other questions. A comment from Jerome is that there are very different flavors in Agile, Waterfall, or Program. So, he agrees with Ian, it's about categorization, but with variations to adapt to the flavor you prefer for your situation. So, an interesting view. Alan has asked about governance and how does governance fit into these things? Do you have a view on that?
Again, taking my view and kind of my experience, governance is different. Governance is absolutely different. When you think about a program, for example, compared to a project, and you just think about kind of all the projects and the BAU activities within a program, there is a different set of governance that's required compared to a project. And so it's back to understanding what the beast is in order to be able to tame it effectively. So governance for me is a really, really kind of key part of any kind of change initiative, and getting it right is going to help. Getting it wrong will massively hinder, and it comes back to understanding what it is.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. So can I just move on to a question for Adrian? Would you agree that you can have agile cycles in the delivery of tranches of projects, programs, and with a waterfall life cycle?
Yes, is the simple answer to that. As I say, it becomes more complicated because you're using these compartments to describe it. Fundamentally, human activity is you think of something you want, you design it, you produce it, and then you check to see if it does what you wanted it to do. And the fundamental difference between so-called waterfall and so-called agile is simply the number and timing of those loops of designing, testing, and checking. So agile people are very big on the minimum viable product. Well, if you're building a bridge, the finished item and the minimum viable product are the same thing. So you broadly do it in one cycle. If you're developing a website, then you can do it in multiple short cycles. Fundamentally, human endeavor is the same. It's just the speed of the cycles with which you achieve your objective.
And the last word goes to Ian. Olga has said, compartmentalization leads to oversimplification. Doesn't that limit our understanding?
Look, I'm all for simplification. I'm all for the simple life. The simpler the better. You make a valid point, Olga. This, kind of, can it lead to oversimplification? So there's a balance. There's a balance. For me, things are complicated enough. We need that order. The simpler we can get it, the better. And I just think if we've got some kind of things that we can do to help us, then I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Okay. Thank you both very much. Mark, can we go back to the main slides? I think there's some contact details. If we could pull those up just before we close.
Yeah, what I'll do, Richard, I'll put the details in the follow-up email. So they're not currently on the slides, so yeah.
Okay.
I'll do them
and clearly, if anyone would like to get in touch with Adrian or Ian before you get the follow-up email, please contact Mark and we can pass them on. Clearly, Ian will be delighted to talk to anyone about any of the products that he has mentioned on this debate. And Adrian will be happy to talk to anyone who's interested in, a lot of the philosophy and thinking behind the Praxis framework, which he was the instigator for, and is available for free online. Thank you to Adrian and Ian. It was fascinating. I actually really enjoyed the way you handled it and the different views you had. So thank you both very much for putting in the time and effort to prepare for it and make it, for me at least, a very entertaining session. And for the few hundred people who joined, many thanks for joining. Please share your thoughts with us about the format, and if there's other things you'd like to see us debate, and any views you have on the time and the style that we adopted. So thank you, everybody, and have a really good day wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
And thanks,
Bye-bye.
Richard. Bye. Thanks, Ian.